1945. The war is almost over. Germany has fallen. Europe is in ruins. But in the Pacific, Japan is still fighting. And they are not done. Now imagine one thing changes. Just one. What if Japan didn't lose? What if Japan won? Buckle up, because this timeline breaks the entire modern world. In our timeline, 2 atomic bombs ended it. Hiroshima, August 6, 1945. Nagasaki, August 9, 1945. Japan surrendered. The war ended. But in this timeline, those bombs never drop. President Truman hesitates. The ethical debate inside the White House tears the decision apart, and Japan gets the time it needs to regroup, to reinforce, to fight back. See, here's what most people don't know. By 1945, Japan had developed its own nuclear program. It was behind America's, but not by much. In this timeline, with 3 extra months and no atomic strike, Japan tests its first nuclear device in October 1945. Not as powerful as Little Boy, but powerful enough. The entire balance of the Pacific War shifts overnight. America was planning Operation Downfall, the full land invasion of Japan. Military estimates projected 1 million American casualties. Some said more. In our timeline, the bombs made that invasion unnecessary. But in this timeline, Japan now has a nuclear device. America cannot invade. The cost is too high. The American public is exhausted. And for the first time in the war, Washington blinks. 1946. Peace talks begin in neutral Switzerland. Japan sits at the table not as a defeated nation, but as a nuclear power. The terms they negotiate are unthinkable in our timeline. Japan keeps Korea, Japan keeps Manchuria, Japan keeps its Pacific Island territories, and most shockingly, Japan keeps its emperor, its military, and its sovereignty completely intact. The United States walks away with nothing but a ceasefire. It is the most humiliating diplomatic moment in American history. Timeline: the Cold War was a 2-player game. USA versus Soviet Union. In this timeline, it becomes 3. USA controls the West. Soviet Union controls Eastern Europe and Central Asia. Japan controls East Asia and the Pacific. 3 nuclear superpowers, 3 ideologies, 3 competing visions for the future of the world. The Cold War just got 3 times more dangerous. Japan's Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere, which in our timeline was exposed as brutal occupation, in this timeline becomes a real geopolitical bloc. China is divided. Korea remains Japanese. The Philippines, Indonesia, Vietnam, Burma, all fall under Japanese economic and military control. 2 billion people living under Japanese imperial influence, the largest empire in human history by population, and Japan rules it all with an iron grip. But 2 billion people don't stay quiet. Underground resistance movements explode across Asia. In China, Mao Zedong's communist forces grow stronger than ever, now fighting both Japanese occupiers and Soviet-backed factions. In Korea, guerrilla fighters wage a decades-long war of independence. In Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh leads a brutal resistance that makes our timeline's Vietnam War look minor. Japan is the most powerful empire on Earth, but it is surrounded by fire on every side. Back in the United States, something is breaking. The failure to defeat Japan sends shockwaves through American politics. Who lost the Pacific becomes the defining question of the 1950s. McCarthyism explodes into something far uglier. Military spending triples. The draft never ends. An entire generation of American men spend their 20s in uniform, waiting for a war that never quite starts and never quite ends. By 1955, there are now 5 nuclear powers: USA, Soviet Union, Japan, Britain, France. The world is one miscalculation away from annihilation. In our timeline, the Cuban Missile Crisis was the closest we came. In this timeline, there are 3 Cuban Missile Crises, one in the Pacific in 1953, one in Korea in 1959, one in the South China Sea in 1961. Each one almost ends everything. Each one is resolved by pure luck as much as diplomacy. The world lives in permanent terror. Here's where it gets interesting. In our timeline, Japan rebuilt after defeat and became an economic powerhouse by the 1970s. In this timeline, Japan never rebuilds from scratch. It builds from strength. No occupation, no American written constitution, no rebuilding period. Japan takes the industrial base it had in 1945 and supercharges it. By 1960, Japan is the second largest economy in the world. By 1970, it challenges America for first place. Sony, Toyota, Mitsubishi, not just consumer brands, the engines of a global empire. With three superpowers competing, Africa and the Middle East become the ultimate battleground. Every nation is a chess piece. Japan courts African nations with infrastructure investment. The Soviet Union arms revolutionary movements. America props up monarchies and dictators. The result? Proxy wars on every continent. More brutal, more widespread, more devastating than our timeline. The Cold War in our world was bad. In this timeline, it is catastrophic. 1969. In our timeline, America beats the Soviets to the moon. In this timeline, the space race has three competitors, and Japan wins it. A Japanese astronaut plants the rising sun flag on the lunar surface on July 20th, 1969. The same date Neil Armstrong landed in our world. The image beamed back to Earth breaks the American spirit like nothing else has. The space race is over. Japan won. The humiliation breaks something in America. By the early 1970s, a political crisis unlike anything in American history unfolds. Anti-war protests turn into something more. A movement demanding total political restructuring. Several southern states openly discuss secession. The federal government deploys the National Guard against its own citizens. For 3 terrifying years, America teeters on the edge of a second civil war. It pulls back, barely. But the America that emerges is angrier, more militarized, and more isolated than ever before. Here's the twist nobody sees coming. In our timeline, China rose to power partly because of the vacuum left by Japan's defeat. In this timeline, Japan's occupation of China radicalizes an entire generation. Mao's revolution is more popular than ever. By 1965, Communist China breaks free of Japanese control in the north, with Soviet backing. Now there are 4 superpowers: USA, Soviet Union, Japan, China. The world just got even more complicated and even more dangerous. 3 superpowers competing in a permanent Cold War means one thing: technology moves fast. The space race produces moon bases by 1975. Military competition produces stealth technology a decade early. The internet arrives in 1971 instead of 1983. Personal computers hit homes in 1978. Smartphones by 1995. The technological acceleration of permanent superpower competition means, in some ways, this darker timeline is more advanced than ours. In 1978, the tension finally breaks. China and Japan go to war directly. No proxy, no negotiation. Just 2 nuclear powers deciding they cannot share Asia. The Great Asian War lasts 4 years. 30 million people die. Cities across China and Korea are destroyed. The Soviet Union and America watch from the sidelines, each terrified that intervening tips the world into nuclear exchange. Japan wins, barely, but the cost is so catastrophic that the Japanese empire never fully recovers. By 1990, the Japanese empire is crumbling from within. Resistance movements across Asia have never stopped fighting. The economy, stretched across 2 billion people and decades of military spending, finally buckles. Street protests in Tokyo make Tiananmen Square look small. The emperor abdicates, the military fractures into factions, and in the span of 3 years, the greatest empire the modern world has ever seen collapses, faster than Rome, faster than the British Empire, like a building that had been on fire for decades, finally falling all at once. So what does 2024 look like in this timeline? Asia is a patchwork of new nations, some democratic, some not, still rebuilding from decades of war. America is a fortress, powerful but paranoid, still militarized, still angry. China is the dominant power in Asia. Sound familiar? The Soviet Union collapsed in this timeline too, just 10 years later than ours. Technology is more advanced, but the human cost was catastrophic. An estimated 200 million people died in conflicts directly caused by Japan's victory. The world is richer in technology and poorer in everything. 21 decision. Don't drop the bombs. And the entire 20th century rewrites itself. More superpowers, more wars, more suffering, but also faster technology, a different space race, a Japan that reached heights our timeline never saw. History is never simple. Every what if cuts both ways. Every week we take one moment and ask what happens if it went differently. Subscribe. Drop your alternate history in the comments. We might just make it the next episode. See you in the next timeline.